Welcome to You, Me, Empathy. Thank you for listening. We would like to remind you that this podcast is for informational and entertainment purposes only, and is not a substitute for medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Known as just a silly boy with a feely heart. Please consider supporting the show. Check us out on Patreon or simply leave a review on iTunes. Here's your host and creator of the show, Known Wells.
Hello, feely humans. Welcome to You, Me, Empathy. Today's episode 52. I talk with my friend Danni Starr about what being an empath means, the need for listening and validating the stories of others, and why empathy is the thing that will change the world. I believe that. I think you believe that too. It's the best thing ever. Empathy. It is what grounds us. It is what humbles us. It is what connects us and allows us to grow and to glean from this pale blue dot, glean from our experiences. It allows us to let go of ego. It allows us to find common ground with others who may have different ideas from ours. It allows us to connect and to just be as feely as we are, because that's what we are. We're feely humans, right? That's what we are. So that's what Danni, my guest Danni Starr, and I talk about today. We talk all about empathy, and it's a good one. I love Danni. Sorry, Danni. I don't know why I said Denny. Danni Starr. Any hoozles. I hope you enjoyed the episode. Before we get to it, I do just want to say, I know that recently I posted on Instagram at You, Me, Empathy about my anxiety. I've been having some anxiety lately. It's been pretty high, higher than I've had in a while, to be honest. I'm someone who has anxiety and have dealt with anxiety for all my life, but the last week or so, it's been spiking. And it's partially due to the fact that we had a storm here and we had some leaking from our roof, which is stressful. And then just on top of that, just other things that I won't get into specifically, but it's just been hard. And I just wanted to thank you, the folks who reach out to me on Instagram and in the Facebook community. That's at facebook.com/groups/YouMeEmpathy. Just thank you for your support. Thank you for the ideas to help me process my anxiety better. Thank you to my life partner, Jessica, for talking me through it as well. It's, anxiety is a motherfucker, and it will take over your brain. It's so powerful, and even though my self-talk is rational and tells me things that I know will help, it still eats me alive, and I go to places that I don't want to go. I, in fact, this is a weird thing to say, but I started reminiscing about the self-harm I used to do back in my teens and 20s, and I don't want to go there again. I haven't gone there, but I think maybe it's a vestigial sort of safe space that I had once. It was a comfort space, made me feel in a way that was not the thing that I was feeling, that I was trying to run away from, the anxiety or the pain or the trauma or what have you. And I don't want to go there. I'm okay. I'm working through it. I am telling myself to let go, to be okay in it, to allow myself to breathe, to be kinder to myself, to not let the self-hate come into my life, which is a common pattern for me. But that's where I'm at. So it's been a rough week, but I'm excited to share a new episode with you. New episodes every Monday. Isn't that exciting? We will be doing episodes every Monday for the foreseeable future, on through the holidays and into the new year. And look out for a special 1-year Yumi Empathy anniversary episode in early January. 1 year of Yumi Empathy. That's very exciting. Any hoozles. Please follow the show on Instagram and Twitter at Yumi Empathy, and give us a rating and review in iTunes. That would be fantastic if you do that. It's a free way to support the show, and I love reading them here on the podcast. So go do that. That would be fantastic. I'd love you for it. You're the best. Let's get into this episode. Episode 52, about what being an empath means, the need for listening to the stories of others, and most of all, why empathy is the thing that will change the world, with my guest, Danni Starr.
La la la, you, me, empathy, yeah, la la la.
Welcome to You, Me, Empathy, a podcast about exploring the struggles we face in our day-to-day lives as humans trying to get by on this wondrous and overwhelming pale blue dot. The intent of Yumi Empathy is to talk openly, without judgment, about our neuroses, our mental illnesses, our shared anxieties and worries, to create a dialogue that is vulnerable and deeply human and empathetic, and to share that dialogue with others to inspire emotional and cognitive collaboration and insight, so we can, hand in hand, break down the stigma that make us feel shame and guilt for struggling, for feeling our feelings, for being human. Yumi Empathy is a safe, friendly space designed to inspire the beauty in each of us. Today, I'm happy to explore all things empathy with activist, mental health advocate, feely empath, and human with the most beautiful eyebrows in the world, possibly, Danni Starr. Hello, Danni.
Aw, hi. Thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome. So happy to have you. It's been a long time coming.
Yes, it has. And I'm happy to be here and to talk all things empathy with you. Yeah. And thank you for the eyebrows compliment, because that made me smile.
Well, you're welcome. I mean, it's part of your brand, I guess, if you can call it that, to use a weird, gross word like that.
Yeah, it is. It definitely is. I have a weird obsession with eyebrows. I have a weird obsession with empathy, but also a weird obsession with eyebrows, and it kind of just works for me. So I go with it.
I love it. We're gonna dive deep into each of those two categories. This is the number one eyebrows podcast, if you weren't aware.
I love it. I love it.
Nice. Well, before we get into your story, Danni, we always start off the show with just an emotional check-in. So how are you doing today? How's your week been?
Well, I will say this. I think that I have been in a little bit of a mental health crisis, honestly. And I say that, but I'm also really proud that I know that, because often when that happens, I'm not aware of it until it's a little too late or somebody has figured it out for me.
Sure.
But I have done really well with my mental health struggles. So over the past, first of all, I didn't realize that Venus was in retrograde, and the planets in their retrograde always impact me a lot. And I did not realize. It makes sense now. So today I went and saw a woman who I love, and she does a lot of like energy clearing and kind of chakra stuff. And a lot of people don't believe in that, but I do. It works for me. And I feel like whatever protects your mental health, do that. Right?
Absolutely.
So, the first thing she said to me today was, well, Venus is in retrograde. And I said, well, that makes sense. And, the last 2 weeks, everything has felt in shambles for me. And I could not figure out why I didn't want to get out of bed, or why I didn't really want to celebrate my daughter's birthday, or just all these things that are so out of character for who I am. But a lot of it comes down to the fact that, when the planets shift and when I'm feeling too much of other people's energy and I don't realize it, that impacts my health immensely. But I will say that I am extremely proud of the fact that I started to recognize it. I knew that I needed to call my therapist, my psychiatrist, and Brenda, the energy healer, because I knew something was wrong and I didn't want to continue to feel that way. And that to me is growth and progress. And I'm happy about that. So I was doing awful. And today I feel vindicated in the fact that I know that I'm doing the right things to protect my mental health. And that to me is everything.
That's so great. And I'm sorry you had been struggling, but that's an insight and a look inward that is hard to find sometimes. And kudos to you for finding that.
Thank you so much. And thank you for asking me how I'm doing, because I find that that's what I made a pact with myself, random tangent, but I made a pact with myself that when someone asks me how I'm doing, I'm going to tell the truth. And I'm not referring to the cashier at, the grocery store, because those are one of the, how you doing? Oh, I'm good. Keep it moving. But somebody who cares about me, or somebody who understands empathy or empaths or compassion, someone who actually cares, don't lie to them, because I'm doing them a disservice and myself a disservice. If they're asking, it's because they genuinely care. And if I need the help, I need to also take some personal responsibility and ask for the help. And so I really appreciate you asking.
Yeah, of course. I think that's a good lesson that we should all take, and that we need to be just honest about our feelings and and the more we do that, and the more we make a practice of talking about it, the easier it becomes, and then the people in our lives who we love, they get used to that, and then that conversation, that sort of vulnerability and openness, maybe becomes a thing in their lives.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome. I'm glad you found some validation there. Recognizing that Venus was in retrograde, and finding that therapy is helpful for you. That's wonderful. I love it. I love to hear it.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. As far as my sort of emotional check-in this week, the listener knows, Danny, but my wife and I recently purchased a home.
Yes.
And we're it's a tiny little home. It's in sort of the country. It's in a weird spot in Southern California, because when you think Southern California, you think sort of like cookie cutter, like every house like smashed up against one another, everything looks the same, but we're in this little pocket that is country, where we have a P.O. box, we have a septic system. It's
wow.
Our power was out all day yesterday, so it's we have like 100-year plus oak trees in our yard. It's lovely and beautiful, and that all is great. And I feel weird saying that I've been stressed by all of the home stuff, because I feel I'm coming from a privileged place to even be able to buy a home. But I have been sort of stressed by it, and out of my routine and out of my schedule. This is in fact my first full recording of Yumi Empathy in over a month, because we've been moving and we bought all that stuff. And so I've just been a little out of sorts and a little off my game, and a little scatterbrained. So that's where I'm at.
I think it's important though to understand that your feelings, whether you feel that they're coming from a place of privilege or whatever, are still valid. I always used to feel bad about, when I think, oh, but someone else has it worse. And that's true. It's always true.
Sure.
There is always a worse situation. There is always someone else struggling more or differently or harder. But at the end of the day, we are still human, and we still feel our feelings. Yes. So I don't think that it's necessarily like one of those things that, we already feel so much. So why feel bad about feeling bad?
Totally.
Right. So I think, your feelings are very valid. Buying a house is extremely stressful. Yes, it's a blessing. It absolutely is a blessing, and that's amazing. But it is also extremely stressful, and your feelings are valid. So I would encourage you not to feel bad about feeling bad.
Oh,
'Cause
well,
that
this is,
that is
I
a curse
mean,
for us.
what a beautiful moment of empathy you're sharing with me, because I appreciate that support with all of my heart. It's funny, I tell myself that intellectually, like I can connect with what you're saying and say, yeah, of course, we're all humans, we all have valid feelings, and then the sort of insecure, the sort of the self hate part of myself, the those aspects of myself, like make it a little difficult sometimes. But I
Of
do
course.
appreciate that validation, because
No problem.
we need it. We all need that from time to time.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, let's transition into your story. We're going to get into all things empathy and certainly eyebrows, but I want to understand a little bit. The question I'd like to sort of start off with my guest is some seminal moments from either childhood or just seminal moments in your own mental health journey. Can you share a couple of sort of seminal moments that speak to who you are today?
Yeah, I think I've always been a feeler, and I referred to that because I didn't know that there was a word. I didn't know that empath was a thing
Hmm.
as a child, obviously. So as a young person, I was a feeler. I knew instantly when I was around certain people if I should be around them, if I shouldn't. I knew I was very intuitive, and I knew situations that I should be in or I shouldn't be in. I didn't understand it in high school, for instance. I remember when the bell would ring and so many people would be, it was at like literally, that scene in movies when the bell rings and then the whole hall just fills up.
Yeah.
Like high school is really like that. And so I would be in the hall and I would instantly duck into a classroom that was empty because there was too much commotion, and now I realize it was energy. It was too much energy. I was feeling too much when I was in those situations, and I didn't understand that. So for me, it was just like, oh, that's too much. I don't like that. And I'd pop into a classroom and wait. I was always 5 minutes late to every class, always.
Yeah.
And the reason is because I couldn't deal with the crowds, and I couldn't deal with the crowds because I was feeling too much. When you don't understand that, that starts to kind of mess with your mental health. You don't know why you're different. You don't understand those things. And there have been different moments throughout life. 9/11 was a really big moment for me, and a lot of people, obviously. But I missed a week of school after 9/11, and I didn't understand it. I'm sorry. Let me start over because it was Columbine. It wasn't 9/11. Both of them screwed me up. But
Sure.
I missed a week of school after Columbine. National tragedies have always impacted me far more than people around me that I was that I would see or was aware of. And Columbine was one of those things that did. And I missed a week of school when Columbine happened. And I didn't miss a week of school because I was scared that the school was going to be shot up. I missed a week of school because I couldn't comprehend that there were people who were capable of that kind of hate and that kind of who could do such a thing. And
Right.
I couldn't get out of bed. I physically could not move. I didn't eat. And my mom thought something was happening in school. She thought all these different things. And I didn't even know what was happening. I just felt I couldn't move. I was crippled. By the tragedy I was. And then, 9/11 happened and the same type of thing happened. I couldn't get out of bed. I didn't understand. I was in high school when 9/11 happened, and just the same type of things and national tragedies. I remember the Oklahoma City bombing and how I felt during those, and just things that the majority of people, they hear the story, they say, oh, that's too bad, and they carry on. I've never been able to just carry on. Never. And
Where do you
and as a
go?
child,
Where do you go emotionally when like, do you remember where your headspace went when Columbine happened? You must have been pretty young.
yeah, I was. I just remember shutting down and isolating. I didn't get out of bed. I was physically ill.
Wow.
And because, mentally I couldn't comprehend it, and my body started to shut down. I didn't want to eat. I couldn't get out of bed. I didn't want to do anything. And, as a child, you don't understand that. And when your parents don't understand that, they don't nobody's understanding. So then there's just this big, huge, all it is confusion. No one knows that this is a mental health thing. No one understands like what an empath is. And there's not even a word for it that to say, oh yeah, that's me. And that makes sense. And so the majority of my life, I just kind of felt like I didn't belong because I felt too much. And then that was always a negative thing. No one's looked at me and said, wow, you have a beautiful spirit or your heart is really nice. They were like, you're dramatic, you're emotional. And it was always so negative. So then imagine being this person and you kind of like the way that you respond to these things, because shouldn't people care about these things? Shouldn't, that's
Right, yeah.
how I always thought, like, why don't we care about these things? Why do people just continue on and they don't care? Why is the very next day we'll send you thoughts and prayers, but the very next day we don't care anymore. But like, I could never stop caring. And so I kind of thought that was a badge of honor. And then people would always make me feel bad about it. You're dramatic, or why are you crying about this? Or why, and so I learned to internalize that and then started to feel shame for those things. And that impacted my mental health. And so you live that life over and over again, and national tragedies continue to happen. And then like your own life and your own childhood and things that trauma impacts you, and you don't have any explanation for the way that you feel because no one explains that this is a real thing, and that and so you just learn to kind of hate yourself, and you learn to stop showing your emotions the way that you would like to, and all of that impacts you on a physical, spiritual, mental level. And it wasn't until, I think after I had my daughter, who will be 7 this year, that I really started to fully understand the power of my own empathy, and that it wasn't something I should be ashamed of. It was something I needed, one, to protect myself, because obviously I feel so much, but also it was a beautiful thing. It does still, it continues to obviously impact my mental health all the time, but I'm learning every single day how to protect myself and to protect my energy. And it's a process, but it's a beautiful process. I don't let anyone insult me anymore for my emotions. I spent a lot of time letting people insult my emotions or call me names because I am an emotional person, and I very much value my emotions, and I think empathy is what's going to change the world, and so I don't want to be ashamed of that at all anymore.
Yeah, nor you should be. I think that's very beautifully said. I think we as a culture have, in many ways, emotions, the word itself has become almost negatively conceived in some ways. And, that's just wrong. That's we need to change that. I want to go back a little bit to when you started realizing you were being impacted by these national tragedies, and
Mm-hmm.
were you talking about it openly and you just didn't feel like you had the sort of support, or was the perception that you had, in Columbine or 9/11, was the perception that you had that, oh, people are sort of only caring for a brief period of time and I'm different? Like how, or did it come from a place of like, I'm talking about this stuff and then I'm just not getting that sort of validation and feedback that I need?
I think it was a combination of a lot of different things. One, I didn't fully understand it because when everyone else starts to move on from something and you're, dwelling in it, you start to feel like maybe something's wrong with me. Like, why can't I get over this? Why can't everyone else is back to the, hustle and bustle of life, and I can't get out of bed? And then you start to feel almost kind of selfish. Like, this didn't happen to me. Why do I feel this way? But, and that's awful, because I never wanted to bring anything back to me. I literally just could not stop thinking about these things and these families and children and just, all of these different things. But because nobody was understanding of what I was going through, I started to kind of like self-blame, like, well, why can't you just get over it? And why, this isn't about you. But it was bigger than that. It's always been bigger than that. And I wish I would have realized that earlier on. But yeah, no, people just didn't seem to react to those tragedies the way that I did. I mean, initially everyone did. We
Yeah.
all sat together. I remember how it felt. We all cried. We all were like, wow. But then, the time went on and the days went on and people just kind of moved on. And I just could not do that. I mean, I was sick, just couldn't function. It was so awful. And nobody understood that. I didn't even understand. It's hard. It's hard. I can't be mad at anyone either because
Yeah.
I didn't really understand it myself. But it was a very isolating experience. And then unfortunately that experience turned into another world tragedy. That was another isolating experience for me. And then there was another one and then followed by another school shooting and another, it was one after the other. And I realized more and more after those things were happening that I definitely was different than a lot of people.
And it's, I will say that you're not. I think there are many of us that are deeply impacted by those things and want to change and feel overwhelmed by it, feel shame for not, like I even have felt shame for not being directly impacted by some of those things, which is like very strange. It's a very strange feeling, but how, after having your first daughter, how have you, in this sort of period where you're sort of looking inward and realizing that this is a huge part of who you are as a person, like how have you been able to better manage that, process that? Because that is a lot to take on. That's a huge burden and a lot to take on your shoulders.
It is. Boundaries are key for me.
Yeah.
I have learned to, I used to really insert myself into my family's drama because I just wanted to help or I wanted to fix or save or rescue or, but I realize now that I can be compassionate to a situation without taking it all on. I can, it also like boundaries with social media because social media can send me into a tailspin of depression and, I would never read the comments, like literally is one of my mottos because I'll read a story. It really is. And there, I learned a valuable lesson in a tragic story. I was reading a story about a family who lost their child. She froze to death outside. And what happened was the kids had recently watched, it was when Frozen, the movie, was really big. And, the kids were so excited about Frozen and they had watched it a million times. And in the middle of the night, one of the siblings woke the other sibling up and did the whole, do you want to build a snowman thing? And they went outside. Yeah. And one of the siblings went back in and the other one couldn't get back in the house. And I'm reading these comments and people are saying things like, how could you not know your kids are out of the house? Well, one, you're sleeping. You don't assume your children are going to get up and go reenact a movie. And that's just the way my mind works. My mind doesn't work. My mind does not operate with how, and it had before, this empathy thing increased over the years. And man, some days I wish I could turn it off, but my mind doesn't operate like that. I don't think, holy hell, how could you not know your kids weren't out of the house? Instantly, I thought, oh my God, you just went through the unimaginable, and now you have to see these comments.
Yeah, like it's just not helpful. Yeah, that question is just coming from a place of judgment.
Right. And that was a great lesson for me because I'm reading these comments, how could you not know? And this and that, or, every time I see, especially when, things involving children and I see these comments, well, I would never have done this. And I'm just like, yeah, well, they lost a child, they lost a child. How, what, I just don't understand. And so for me, one of the greatest lessons I've learned is like boundaries, especially with social media, because I go down a rabbit hole of starting to read comments. And then I realize my anxiety is spiking. And then I realize I am in a tailspin of, you are not going to be able to claw your way out of this if you carry on reading these comments or, these awful stories about some things that happen in the world. Sometimes I have to shut it off. I have to have these boundaries because I know that it is not good for my spirit. It's not good for my mental. And those things are very important to me. And so I have really learned to protect myself, and I falter. I falter often.
For sure.
I believe that the last 2 weeks I've been faltering horribly, but it's a process, and I'm learning. But I think that boundaries have been key in protecting myself from my,
Yeah.
with my family, with my friends, with social media, with all these different, there's just an array of information all the time, an array of different people's um, feelings and their own drama and trauma. And I have just really learned to protect myself and to have these boundaries. And it doesn't mean that I'm not that I don't care. It just means that I really do care, but I also know what some of this stuff does to me, and I have to make myself a priority as well.
Yeah. Yeah. In the previous episode of this podcast, I talked with Janet Fouts, who's a mindfulness coach, and the whole episode was really about caring for yourself while caring for others.
Yeah.
Her life partner, got breast cancer, and she sort of described that experience and just, feeling so out of control and feeling like she wanted to just give her everything. And she eventually realized that she wasn't caring for herself during the process. And then ultimately in doing so, really wasn't a good caretaker for the people in her lives, especially her partners. And it's just a good lesson that, we have to create those boundaries because otherwise we're not going to be able to embrace the empathy and the compassion that we want to if we're not, looking inward and caring for ourselves.
Absolutely. 100% agreed.
How has, in your sort of, well, one of the things I was going to say is I was going to give you kudos for coming to that conclusion of boundaries, because it is hard, especially for someone like yourself who has such a huge heart and wants to help others. And the question I'd pose to you is, when things like this happen now in your life, when big events that are outside of your control, something tragic happens, death, etc., how do you process that now? And are there things that you do? It's maybe an example is you donate your time or your money or whatever. Like, are there specific things that help sort of alleviate that feeling of overwhelm?
Yeah, therapy for one is key. And I've been with my therapist for so long now that she really knows me, and she knows my heart, my spirit, and she knows my mental processing. And so usually when there is some type of national tragedy or something that she knows will trigger me, she instantly checks in.
Oh,
Hey,
that's great.
I've been paying attention to the media. I just want to make sure you're good. And that is so helpful for me because I feel less alone. I feel like there is somebody who totally gets me. For her to know that, me watching the news of any particular week, something may impact me, and for her to check in on me, it just makes me feel heard, seen. And I think a lot of us are really just trying to feel that way, to feel heard, to feel validated, to feel seen. And so she does that for me often, and that is extremely helpful. I also I have a good support system in my best friend, who is a lot like me in that she's a feeler, and she knows how I'm so impacted by the world in general. And so she has been just a constant saving grace for me in the fact that we can have these conversations, and I know that I am being heard. I know that there is someone else who understands me, who is also like-minded in the way that we feel about the world. And so that's extremely helpful. And also my children, that's just a natural picker-upper. I spend time with them, and no matter how awful I feel about any given thing, they help me feel better. And, I just don't allow myself to not get out of bed anymore. Like I can't, and now I have responsibilities. In high school, I was just like, I'm not going.
Yeah.
And I just kind of stayed there. And now I don't have that luxury to say, I'm just going to take the week off. But also, when things are really bad, I know when I need a mental health day. or two or a week. I have literally jumped on a plane and went home to Minnesota for a week at a time to put myself in intensive therapy because the world has been too much for me at times. So I'm just really thankful that in these moments now I'm aware. And, my greatest fear is that something might happen where I'm not aware. And that is kind of always in the back of my mind. But what happens if you're triggered too much and you don't even realize you're like in a mental health crisis? But I haven't crossed that bridge yet. And, I believe I have the right people around me to help protect me when I can't protect myself. And so ultimately, I think I'm making the right decisions for myself in the sense of like protecting me.
Yeah, it sounds like it. And I think having that support system and the people in our lives that understand us and understand our triggers, understand our, have had those conversations about our own mental health and our depressions and our darknesses. Like those people in our lives are so huge.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like I need those people in my life. It's like we all do. We all do.
We all do. Yes, yeah. Absolutely.
How have your kids helped in your sort of empathy journey?
Man, I knew I was a feeler. I had no idea that having children would magnify that. It was a blessing and a curse because after I had both of my children, I suffered immensely with postpartum depression and postpartum anxiety. Mm-hmm. And I couldn't, it was the most awful time of my life. But having them and having, both of those illnesses magnified my empathy and my compassion. And I said before, like, I really believe that compassion and empathy is the only thing that really will change the world. And so I used to be so angry that I went through this awful thing, twice and I couldn't understand it and it was frustrating. But now, it's always hard to see it when you're in the storm. But on the other side of it, it's like, but look at my compassion and look at how much I want to change the world and look at the platform I've been given and look at what you're doing. And it's like, you could have never done any of this had you not experienced those awful moments. And I could have never had those awful moments if I didn't have my children. And so my children gave me the worst moments of my entire life, literally, but they also gave me this level of empathy that I am so thankful for. And, I want the world to be a better place for me, for you, for everyone, but I really want this world to be a better place for my children. And they have been a catalyst in a lot of the things that I do, the decisions that I make, the fact that I, continuously want to make the world a better place. They play a major role in that. And so I'm just eternally grateful that I was chosen to be their mom. That's
awesome.
Thank you.
I'm sorry you had to go through the postpartum depression and anxiety. It sounds very intense. What helps me, when I'm in sort of my dark depressive modes is reminding myself that I've been there before. Also that there's not light without dark.
Right.
Also that we are feely humans with a tremendous amount of resilience, and then also reminding us that we have those support systems to get through it all.
Absolutely.
Yeah. What if you don't mind talking about it? What did that postpartum period look like for you? How did that impact you physically, mentally, emotionally?
Well, it was without a doubt the hardest and worst thing that I've ever experienced. And I've been through a lot, but nothing came close to that. I just didn't recognize myself at all in the mirror, in my spirit. I was going through the motions very consistently. I was taking care of my children, but I didn't shower for weeks. I wasn't eating. I wasn't sleeping. And, sleep is key. Sleep is imperative. You take away sleep and very quickly you'll lose your mind. And that's exactly what happened. I kidnapped my daughter for 14 days. Just went on the run because I thought the world was trying to kill us and get us. And I thought her father was plotting against me to kidnap her and take her to a different country. And, now obviously none of those thoughts are rational, but in the moment and while I was actually living it, I believed all those things.
Yeah, it was real.
100%. It was so real. I believed that, the world was conspiring against me. I believed that he was going to steal my child. And so I had to steal her first. I was doing it to protect her, to protect myself. And, it's such a hard, it's so difficult to even describe the way that I felt. Especially because I had zero idea that I was sick. In my mind, I was just, oh, this is all normal. You need to kidnap your kid. You need to go on the run. You need to do these things. Now that I'm out of it, and I'm mind blown what I lived through during that time. And also, I'm a different person. And I say that because there's no way you can live through something like that and remain the same.
Yeah.
So, the person that I used to be doesn't exist anymore. I had to find a new normal. My whole life changed as a result of postpartum depression and postpartum anxiety. And I still live with, after effects of that time. And that is, it's spiked my anxiety. I didn't have real anxiety at least I wasn't aware of it until after that. And it's been a constant struggle of like trying to maintain not being anxious all the time since then. And, I have an amazing partner. He is phenomenal and have a baby, and we would like to have a baby. And I want that so much for us, but also when I have babies, I lose my mind.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a very bittersweet concept. It's like this man that I love who loves my children. I would love to do this with him, but also I'm terrified, you know? So it's one of those things where it's so hard to even, put into words. And also it's difficult too, because I spoke to a woman once and she had been obese and lost all the weight. And she said when she looks in the mirror, she still sees the person she used to be. And I really understood that sentiment, because when I start to talk about the postpartum depression and the postpartum anxiety, I'm not the woman right now that I am. I wind up right back there. Just I'm in it and I think about it, and it's so difficult to go back there. But also every time I speak about it and every time I have been open about it, I have received hundreds of thousands of emails and direct messages and from women who had suffered with postpartum depression and postpartum anxiety and had no idea, or women who are currently suffering from it and who said, I only realized this because I listened to this, or I read your book, or this or that. And I know that, if I had to suffer to help so that no other woman ever suffers in silence over this again, I would do it all over again. I really would, because I've been put in a position where I talk about it now, as bad as it hurts, as weird as it is to go back there. It is helping people and it is saving lives and it's protecting babies. And, when we talk about empathy, what's really mind blowing to me is the lack of empathy I had for mothers that killed their babies. I remember being young, super young, and just being like, oh, those women are going to hell, and not really understanding at all, like, where they could possibly be mentally. But perspective is everything, right? Because I wanted to kill myself and my child. Yeah. And then I got it. I was like, oh, wait, these women are not demons. They don't belong in hell. Like, they're literally living in hell on earth because their mind is failing them. And so it was such a tough time, and it was awful, and it felt trapped, and I felt caged, and I felt like I was dying even though I was like living. But again, there's always, like you said, like light and dark, right? Mm-hmm. If you don't experience that, how could you ever possibly realize like the beauty of the after of it, the aftermath, and just all these different things. And so while it was the most trying time in my entire life, and while I'm terrified to have another baby, I also realize what beauty has come from the entire situation. My children, the people that I've helped, my book, like all these, all these different things have been they've been beautiful, and so I'm sorry that I went through it, but I'm not also, if
Yeah,
that makes sense.
it totally makes sense. And it's hard. I think that a thing we don't talk about enough as humans is that experience, you kidnapping your child and being in that headspace, like that was as real to you as anything. And
Yes, it
I
was.
think we need to allow ourselves, and we need to remember that that was your reality,
Mm-hmm.
and you lived that emotionally, and you felt it that emotionally. Even if it, may like, if we're looking at it analytically and from the brain's perspective, maybe it's a bit flawed, but we have to have compassion and understand that the reality is that you lived that trauma emotionally, and we have to have
Mm-hmm.
compassion and empathy for that.
Thank you. It's such a good like point. It really is, because but also, you know what? It also makes me realize there are some people who are really incapable of understanding something until they go through it. But
Sure.
those are people who lack empathy.
Mm.
And so, sometimes I wonder if empathy could be taught, if it's innate, because, my children are extremely empathetic, but I birthed them, and I'm raising them, so that makes sense. But then I think about people who just don't teach their kids about compassion and empathy, and I don't think that it's necessarily um, something that I just don't think everyone realizes how important of a characteristic it is. How important it is to, even if you've never experienced something, to be able to look at someone else's trauma, someone else's tragedy, someone else's situation, and say, wow, like look what they're going through, and to feel something for them. I
Yeah.
just don't think I don't think everyone understands that. I don't, and I struggle with that a lot, because I'm wondering if we can teach resiliency, can we also not teach empathy? I mean, I think it's so important.
I mean, I think about that all the time, and I think like most things, it's probably a combination of many things. How you're raised, your genetic makeup, personal experiences. I know for me, I from the outset, I was a pretty sensitive boy, and growing up with a violent father sort of forced me into a situation where I learned to just kind of hide all of the emotional parts of me,
Hmm.
to a point where I almost died, and I developed anorexia and pretty dark depression, and suicidal ideation, all of that stuff in my late teens and early 20s. And once I was able to sort of come out of that and realize, oh, like talking about this stuff and being vulnerable about this stuff is a good thing, and it
Right.
is a powerful thing, and it is a thing that will move the world. And I agree with you. Empathy and compassion, and these two things are the keys to making this world, this only world that we have, better.
Hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
for sure. Do you, so as a woman of color, and correct me if I'm stepping on any sensitive areas, but
No, you're good. Ask away.
as a woman of color, like, is with your sort of openness and vulnerability about your own mental health journey, has that culturally been a challenge for you with other friends of color, or in your community, or because I know
I
there
can
are
tell.
cultural differences when it comes to
Yeah.
mental health conversations, and I've had conversations with one of my Vietnamese friends, and she sort of experiences it very differently, and it's just very fascinating to me.
Yeah, so in the Black community, it's always been kind of pray it away. And that just doesn't work anymore. And what, no matter what you believe, like I believe in God and I believe in the universe and I believe in all types of different things. But what I do know is that mental health is real, and it's, for instance, there's this, there's this like this old tale that I used to hear, and it's about a guy. There was a flooding and there's a guy in a roof and he's like, I'm good. God's going to save me. And a guy comes by in a boat and he's like, get in. He's like, no, I'm good. Like, God is going to come and save me. And he's like, all right, are you sure? And he's like, yeah. Another boat comes by. He's like, come on, the water's rising. Get in the boat. And the guy's like, I'm good. God's going to save me. And he's like, all right. Third boat comes by. And, he still wants God to save him. And, the boat carries on and the man drowns. He dies, gets to heaven because he belongs. And he's like, God, what happened? Like, I said, I knew you would come for me. And he goes, well, I sent 3 boats, And so for me, it's like, I believe that God or the universe or whatever people believe come in so many different forms. And why can't God come in the form of your therapist or your prescription? There are tools that need to be used. And so while there's a stigma in general, but within the Black community, there is a major stigma of mental health. And there's also this idea that, Black women, especially, and Black men, well, men aren't really taught to show their emotions in general, but it's Black men are strong and Black women have to carry the weight of the whole world on their backs, and they can't ask for help and they can't do this because you're just supposed to push through. And it's cultural because it's been passed down. You go all the way back, and our ancestors didn't have they weren't able to show their emotions like that because they had to press on and push through. And the adversity that they experienced, and they weren't able to show their emotions. They weren't able to let up, because if you let up back then, you died. You had to keep pushing through in such horrible times. And so it's just that, we're strong and we don't get to, but you know what? I am strong, but I'm tired. I'm exhausted with being a strong Black woman. Like, can I get some help? Like, seriously,
I
am
breaks for sure.
Yeah, we all need breaks. And in those mentalities, those are very detrimental. Yes, I want to raise strong Black independent women. I do. But I also want my daughters to know that one of the strongest things you could ever do is ask for help. I want them to understand that asking for help does not make you weak. It actually is a very strong thing. And I think it's an amazing quality. But when we talk about cultural and mental health, I think I'd be doing a disservice if I didn't say this. I also feel like right now America is gaslighting Black people. I feel like Black people are speaking on their experiences, and you have people saying, oh, you're pulling the race card. I feel like, I feel like there's been a huge, I feel like a lot of us have experienced casual racism often, but I feel like there is now blatant racism happening. I mean, you see it with the police being called on people because they're barbecuing in a park, or they have a lemonade stand, or just illogical reasons to call the police. And I see Black people every day, or people of color every single day I'm so sorry. I see people every single day telling their stories, and all of a sudden their stories are met with, stop playing the victim. Stop pulling the race card. It's like it's so invalidating of what.
It's so undermining of what they're saying. It's disgusting.
It is. It's so, and I mean, I have had conversation after conversation. And when if you want to know why my mental health is struggling right now, it's because of what I'm living through. It's because I am constantly telling people how I'm struggling right now, because the world is not friendly to, 1, to women, and 2, to Black people in general.
Yeah.
And I'm telling people this, and I'm literally having people look me dead in my face and say, oh, just get over it. Oh, you're pulling the race card. I literally feel like I'm being gaslighted every single day by people, by strangers on the internet, when I talk about racism or sexism or homophobia or toxic masculinity. I have people gaslighting me every day, and that's exhausting. I want to do this work. I want to do good things for this world. But when you feel like you're being gaslighted every single day, there's no way your mental health is going to flourish. It's just not.
I'm so sorry. And my heart goes out to you. And it goes back to what we were saying before, like, listen to what people are saying. Listen to the thing that they're speaking to from their hearts. They're not just blowing bullshit out of their ass. They are speaking from their hearts about their own experiences, which are all valid and we need to listen to.
Mm-hmm. And that's so important. I would never hear someone tell me their story and my initial response would be, well, you should stop playing a victim. Like, that's just not, and I don't, it's,
yeah,
I'm at a
it's the
loss
worst.
for words.
A perfect anecdote is, and I've mentioned it on the podcast before, but when I was in the throes of my anorexia, I had a soccer coach tell me, just go eat a sandwich. It's the same sort of thing. It's so invalidating. Yes. It strips me completely of power and my own sort of volition, and it completely demeans and ignores the issue and just strips me of my identity completely.
Yeah, and when you think about people just wanting to feel visible or heard, seen or heard, and then you look that person in the face, or you hide behind a computer and you tell them like, "Oh, that's not true. That didn't happen," or "There has to be another reason," or "Well, I experienced this, but it wasn't because of this." Like, you are literally telling that person, "I don't see you. I don't hear you." And if people just want to be seen and heard, and they're constantly being told, "I don't see you, I do not hear you, and you don't matter," we wonder why mental health crises are just on the rise.
Yeah.
I don't understand how people don't realize, like, this is such a horrible problem.
We need to listen to people. Hear them where they are, as I like to say. And, this episode will be out after November, but I am voting against the racist, homophobic, toxic masculinity douchebags that are currently running our country. It's
Thank God.
It's very disheartening, and it breaks my heart every day to see it and to hear stories like yours and sort of just people being invalidated, and it needs to stop. We need more empathy and compassion in the world.
Absolutely.
So let's transition into kind of what you're doing nowadays and the work you're doing you're doing lots of things. You're doing lots of exciting and wonderful things. And actually, let's talk about your podcast and the book and what all that means. It's called Empathy and Eyebrows.
Yes. A survivalist stories on reviving your spirit after soul-crushing shitstorms.
I love that tagline.
It's a mouthful, but it serves a purpose.
So what is your aim with the book, the podcast? Like what is your goal?
My initial goal was really selfish, I'll be honest. I just needed to tell my story. I needed to...
Oh, can I interrupt real quick?
Yep, go ahead.
Samesies.
Samesies.
Hashtag good. Samesies, right back at you.
Great.
Because with this podcast, I just needed to...
You needed an outlet.
Get my heart out into the world.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I hear you.
So that's exactly how it started. I didn't know it would serve a purpose. That was really never my goal. My goal was, I feel caged. I feel trapped. I need to free myself. That's kind of a theme in my life, is this trapped cage feeling. And I don't understand where it comes from. And I honestly don't care, but I'm constantly chasing freedom. But I started writing the book after a divorce, after I lost myself completely in a marriage. I tried to figure out who I was. I couldn't. And I said, okay, what do you do? What do you love to do? And I love to write. And so I spent, I think it was 11 days-ish in London, and I went by myself, which is odd because I consider myself a twin individual. I don't do a lot by myself, but I knew it was something I needed to do. I went to London and I started writing, and I could not stop. I spent 6 hours a day writing, and then I would sightsee, and then I would write some more, and then I would sightsee some more, and then I would sit down in a coffee shop and have an some English tea in an oversized cup, and I'd continue to write, and I did all these things. And what came to be was Empathy and Eyebrows. It's 41 essays about life, love, being a female in a male-dominated industry, an abusive father, and my postpartum depression and anxiety. It's everything. It's everything that I felt during that time. And like I said, I wrote it for myself. But what happened was I wrote it, and then I started to read it, and I thought, this could really help people. I cannot be the only person who has lost themselves so horribly and had to claw themselves back into finding an identity and refiguring out who they are. And I know a lot of people go through that. And so I published the book. I believed in it so much that I actually fronted the money for it. And I just prayed that it would work out. And the book is doing amazing. And I'm so thankful for it because I put my heart and soul into that book. I told the entire truth that I know. I said, if you're going to do this, you're going to do it the right way, and you're going to speak your truth. You're going to stand in it. You're going to stand by it. And I did. And I'm so thankful because I was chasing freedom, and that, releasing my book and really feeling like all these different entities that try to silence me, whether that be growing up with an abusive father and kind of having to silence my emotions because he was triggered by tears. So he would get more violent when we cried. And, so that felt caging. I couldn't show my emotions. So that felt caging. And then I worked with a narcissist and who was extremely controlling. And even though it wasn't like a domestic partnership, it felt like an abusive relationship. We worked together every day, and every day he made me feel a certain type of way. And I was caged, and I was silenced and muffled, and I couldn't tell my story. And finally I was like, no, this is you taking back every little piece that somebody stole from you. So you're going to tell the truth about everything. And when I did that, it changed my entire life. Like I forced myself to become the woman I wanted to be. And writing that book is what did that.
That's so amazing.
I have 2 children, and the book is my 3rd baby. It's like those are the 3 things that I'm the most proud of in my entire life is my daughters and Empathy and Eyebrows.
What has the reaction to Empathy and Eyebrows been like?
It's been so good. People have been amazing. The reviews are fantastic, and one of the coolest things is when people reach out and they say, I got help because I read this in your book, or I thought I was the only person who experienced this, or, oh my gosh, I have checked yes. And you know, what's crazy is like, I know certain people will understand certain things. An empath reading my book, they're going to get it. They're going to get all parts of it because they're going to think about, oh my gosh, I've been in situations like this. I get it. But men reading my book might not necessarily like a man's not going to go and just pick up my book. It's Empathy and Eyebrows. They might not be like, oh, this is a book I should read. But some of the best moments that I've experienced after writing the book was fathers who would say, oh my God, I read your book and I bought it for my daughter. I bought it for my wife, or, my mother, and then men who randomly would reach out and say, hey, do you think a man could read your book and enjoy it? And I would say, well, yeah, I really do. And honestly, I feel like if you are willing to grow and to see different perspectives, that this is a book that anybody should read. And when men write to me and they say like, I loved your book, I'm mind blown because, I wrote it from a woman perspective, from a Black woman perspective, but also I believe it's a book that could touch anyone. And so I'm just so happy with the reaction to the book. And it's only been out for a year, and it's steadily, getting into different hands and now different people. In the first year, a lot of people buy your book who know you or who know of you because of a radio show or TV or something like that. But now it's starting to get into hands of people who've never heard of me, which I love because those are the people, people who love you are going to love what you do. But people who don't know you, when they reach out and they say, I don't know who you are, but I saw your book randomly here. I was at the Baltimore Book Festival, or I was at this book festival and I saw your book and I read it, and I'm so happy that I found it. Those are the moments that shake me to my core because I'm like, look what you're doing. Like, you're making a difference. And I'm just extremely proud of it. I really am.
That's amazing. I'm really excited to read it myself. And
Yes, I can't wait for you to read it. Like I really can't wait for you to read it.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to pick up a copy. I'm pretty excited by that. And then the podcast is the same name. When did that happen? Did it happen during this at the same time or a little later?
Yeah, it kicked off so we are 20. I'm getting ready to kick off season 2. We're 20 episodes in, and it started in April, and it kind of was just. I knew I was going to walk away from radio. I had been in radio for 15 years, and it was killing my spirit, literally. The industry, the atmosphere, the toxic stress, it was way too much for me. And I left radio, but I also knew how much I love talking to people and connecting with people. And so when I decided to leave radio, I knew without a doubt I had to have a different outlet. And so I launched Empathy and Eyebrows just to have real conversations with real people and to talk about things that matter. Because I spent so much time in radio talking about things. Women often get put in that you have to do a Hollywood report or you have to talk about this. And yeah, when I was 19, that was okay. But I am 33 years old and I don't care about all that Hollywood stuff. Like I want to talk about things that matter. And, occasionally there are some interesting stories in Hollywood that are real meaningful and impactful, but like the day-to-day stuff and keeping up with the Kardashians and stuff like that, like I just don't have the time or patience. I want, time. What I learned in my marriage is that time, you can never get that back. And so I don't do things that I don't want to do. I don't do things that I don't enjoy anymore. Of course we all have to do some of those things, but I spent 7 years in a marriage doing a whole lot of things that I did not enjoy, doing a whole lot of things that I did not want to do to please another person. And I'm not doing that anymore. And my career mirrored that. I started to realize that I was feeling the exact same way married to my career as I did married to my ex-husband. And I don't want that. And so I walked away from both, but knew that using my voice has always been a gift. And I appreciate that gift. And so when I launched Empathy and Eyebrows, it was kind of because I walked away from radio and I didn't want to give up something that I loved.
Yeah.
And so instead of giving it up, I decided to do it on my own terms. And that's how I launched the podcast.
That's cool. I think a lot of people listening will find that very empowering.
Thank you.
It's hard to do that, right?
It's so hard.
It's so hard.
God. It was terrifying.
Especially leaving a career of 15 years,
Yes. And 6 figures. And, I'm working now in mental health, like literally. I do the podcast and I work for TLC, but I am so far removed from media for the most part. And I am assistant program manager for This Is My Brave, which is a nonprofit that works. Thank you, in mental health. And everyone's like, are you crazy? What are you doing? And I'm like, I'm not. I'm just finally following my passion. And your passion changes, like who you are, and you grow, you learn different things. And media is always going to be a huge part of my life. I know that. I love it. I'm good at it, and so I appreciate that. But also, I have always been a social worker, like I've always wanted to change the world. I've always wanted to help people, like my entire life. That has never gone away. And at some point you have to realize, like when things don't go away, when you have that nagging reminder of like, hey, you got to do what you were here to do. There's a purpose for you. It's not just a nagging reminder. It is something telling you this is what you need to do. And so, I was terrified when you have kids and you walk away from a steady paycheck and you decide you're going to work in nonprofit. You're like, what the hell are you doing? But also like you're terrified, but also when there's a will, there's a way. And I'm more fulfilled in the work that I'm doing now. I will always figure it out. And I am much happier without the toxic stress. And so I know without a doubt that I have made the right decision. And the other day someone asked me if I have FOMO, which I didn't even know what the hell that was. I was like, what is that? And they're like, oh, fear of missing out. And I'm like, okay, I need to keep up with the lingo. But I don't miss it at all. I spent 15 years in it. I loved it. I value it for what it was, but I do not miss it at all. Like at all.
That's so great.
Yeah. Thank you.
So tell me a little bit about This Is My Brave. I know a bit about it, but for the listener's sake.
Yeah, This Is My Brave is a nonprofit organization. And what we do is we put on shows all across the country that spotlight mental health. So we go into a city, whatever that city is, or state, or whatever. And, for instance, we're doing a show in DC. So we go into DC and we rent out a theater. And then the entire cast is local. So if we do a show in LA, everybody in that cast is living in LA. Anywhere, Boston, everybody in that cast is living in Boston. And each person gets up there and they show their struggle, but also their triumph through their mental health issues through music or, interpretive dance or poetry or essay. It's just a way, however, whatever your the way you express yourself is. And the shows raise money for mental health. All of the money goes back into mental health. And how I found This Is My Brave is I actually was in one of the shows and I loved the mission so much and what they were doing all across the country. So when I decided to leave radio, I sat down and I thought, okay, what are you going to do? Where are you going to go? And instantly I thought, okay, well, I could work for TED Talks. I could do This Is My Brave, or I could do Still Kickin', which is another really amazing organization.
Oh, yeah,
And so
Nora.
Nora McInerney. Yeah,
yeah,
she wrote,
yeah.
So Nora actually wrote the foreword to my book.
What?
Yeah. So Nora and I went to high school
She
together.
is a delight.
Yes, she's incredible. Terrible. Thanks for asking. So all these different things. So I wanted to work with people who want to change the world. Nora's one of those people. This Is My Brave. And Jennifer Marshall, who's the CEO, she's one of these people. So I sat down and I said, all right, I'm going to apply for TED Talks, Still Kicking, and This Is My Brave. And I'm going to manifest this and I'm going to get here. And, nonprofits are hard because sometimes they don't have a lot of turnover, or they don't have the budget to hire someone. And so it's in TED Talks is such a great organization that they never have any turnover. So it just was hard to get a job. And then out of nowhere, this is the universe. When I tell you this is the universe, I opened my email to literally send an email to Jennifer Marshall, who's the founder of This Is My Brave. And an email blast came through when I opened mine from This Is My Brave. And it said, "We are hiring."
Wow.
And I was like, thank you, universe. This is going to happen. And I literally manifested that. And so now I'm working with the organization. We're putting on shows. We have shows all over the country. And, all of it benefits mental health. People are telling their stories. Storytelling saves lives. This is such an important cause. And I get to be a part of it. I'm so thankful and so grateful. And I'm just really appreciative of the opportunity, and I hope I'm with them for a long time.
That's amazing. I really enjoy This Is My Brave, and I'd love to go to a show. Actually, I was in conversation with Rudy a couple months back before the LA one, because I'm nearish LA. Yeah. And he wanted me to submit something, but it was
I was going to say you should be in a show.
It was like a few days before it, and it sort of popped up. I almost did it, but I was nervous and insecure. Yeah. But maybe next time you guys are in LA, I'll submit something.
Yes, absolutely.
Well,
we would love to have you.
Oh, I appreciate that. Mm-hmm. Let's transition into, we always kind of wrap up the show talking about our empathy heroes. Mm-hmm. And so these are people in our lives who are just good embracers of empathy. And so I always mention one, and sometimes I reach out to my audience to get some, and because I mention an empathy hero for myself every episode, but would you like to talk about your empathy hero first, or would you like me to go first?
I'll let you go first.
Okay. So
I want to hear.
Well, so it could be people in your real life, or it could be fictional characters even, or authors, or what have you. But my empathy hero this week is a woman named Angelica, who I had a conversation with this morning. She works for the waste management company in my area, and we've been having some issues with our trash bins. Our trash guy doesn't seem to want to pick up our green waste, and instead told me to walk the trash bin a good 1,000 yards to another street. And I said, yeah, that's probably not going to work out, and that shouldn't be the case. I'm paying for this service. So I called customer service, and I spoke with a lovely human named Angelica who was just very kind, I felt heard. I felt like my issue was being addressed, and she, reminded me that she'd be giving me a call back by the end of the day, and it was just beautiful customer service. And so I'm calling out Angelica from Waste Management as my empathy hero this week.
I love that. I know, and what's cool about that story is that you can find those people anywhere if you're open to it, and if you're looking, if you have your heart wide open, not just your eyes wide open.
Absolutely.
I love that. Yeah. I am going to pick my 6-year-old daughter because she is a force. She is a special little girl, and she will, if she even sees any person with a frown, or if she sees a person in a wheelchair or a person on crutches or anything, she instantly wants to help them or hug them or help them in their healing in some way or shape or form. And one of the coolest things that ever happened to me was we were in Baltimore, and there was a little old lady who was sitting on a bench, and my daughter asked me if she could go talk to the woman. And I was like, well, she might not want to be bothered, and, maybe this is not the right time, and she said, it's really important, Mom, I need to go talk to her. And I said, okay. And so I kind of was playing with my other daughter, but watching my older one talk to the little old lady. And afterwards, the lady came up to me and she said, your daughter is extremely special. And I said, well, wow, thank you. And she said, I was sitting here and I've had a really rough, few days. And I said, oh, I'm so sorry to hear that. And she said, your daughter came up to me and she said, you're sad and it's okay to be sad, but can I please give you a hug? And gave her a hug. And I said, were you sad? And she goes, yeah. She had been married for like 55 years and her husband had passed away just a couple of days earlier. And my daughter walking by just felt that the woman needed a hug. And she does that everywhere we go all the time. And I have to remind myself not to be impatient sometimes, because I wanted to say, no, we're not talking to that lady right now. Let's go. And that lady needed my daughter in that moment. And it's such a powerful thing when we just slow down and we allow those moments to happen. And when we aren't so hustle and bustle, we can realize when someone is struggling, even if they're not showing signs of their struggle. And so I picked my daughter because she's a special one, and I'm very thankful for her.
Wow, I'm just brimming with hope and joy for the world right now.
I'm so happy.
Your daughter sounds amazing.
She's great. She's a handful sometimes, but she's definitely a little empath, and I'm very proud of her.
Well, aren't us empaths all a little handful sometimes?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I'm glad you said that. It's a good reminder for me to realize, like, I can be a handful too, so I need to be a little more patient with them.
Yeah, and with yourself.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Well, thanks for sharing that. That's really beautiful. Let's plug all your things. Where can people connect with you, Danni, and buy your book and listen to your podcast and all that lovely stuff?
Thank you. DanniStarr.com. That's DanniStarr.com. You can get the book there. It's on Audible. It's on ebook, paperback. All of that is on the website. And then my podcast link is on the website as well. So you can shoot me an email there. I'm reachable all there. And then on social media, I am Danni Starr on pretty much everything.
Lovely. And for the listeners, I'll make sure to include all those links in the show notes.
Yay.
Danni, thank you so much for being on You Me Empathy with me and sharing your story. I really appreciate you and your empathic presence in the world.
Thank you so much. And thank you for what you do. It does not go unnoticed. And I know sometimes that it's difficult because, trust me, I get it. But I appreciate you and your work and everything that you're doing so very much. And it makes me feel like there's a kindred spirit out there. So I appreciate you very much.
Oh, well, right back at you, my fellow feely human.
Yes, very much so.
And to you listeners, as I always say, I'm here, you're here, we're here together on this wayward, overwhelming, awe-inspiring pale blue dot. We have each other. It's You, Me, Empathy.